Do human beings inevitably descend into evil and chaos? It seems as if the skin, the veneer over our civilization is really thin. Are we always destined to fight? Will the mob always turn ugly? How can humans unite and work together well?
Well, it's a very key question, Steve, just now in our society. And it seems that with the tribalism of social media and so on, things get made worse. Some people say the solution is get rid of all religion. That's not the solution. Some people say we're going to live in some kind of secular fantasy. All you need is love. That's not the solution. We are going to see that the only solution is to turn to the only one who can unite us all in his body, in this kitchen table. Okay, we are thinking about Lord of the Flies. Now, I'm going to play a wee clip in a moment. It's a classic book and a classic film. And I'm thinking about it for a particular reason. There was an article that was written fairly recently from a very different perspective than William Golding's Lord of the Flies. But first of all, Steve, have a look at this and then let us know what you think and if you've got any corny jokes.
A brilliant, exciting motion picture, Lord of the Flies.
Piggy? Huh? That was murder. You stop it. What good are you doing talking like that? It was dark. There was that bloody dance. There was thunder, lightning, and rain. We were scared. It wasn't what you said. Oh, Piggy!
The artful, chilling story of castaways degenerating into savagery. Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies is one of the gems that will be watched by connoisseurs of the film for years to come, says the New York Mirror. Don't miss this widely acclaimed and shocking hit, Lord of the Flies.
Well, you just queued me up for a dad joke. So there is a fast food place here that makes chips called Lord of the Fries. I think that's an absolutely amazing name. But yes, I also read an article that pitched a very different setting for a very different scenario for Lord of the Flies kind of event. Tell us a bit about that, Dave.
The article was in The Guardian, and it was basically from a book, basically saying that what happened in Lord of the Flies, I was thinking Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Fries, Lord of the Flies. What happened with that is that it did actually happen. The book and the film wasn't based on an event, but something similar did happen, and it turned out very differently. And we're going to look at that. But I think that this book is one of the most influential books of all time. It's still, I think it sold 30 million copies. I think it has been translated into more than 30 languages, and it's actually one of the most banned books as well, which is, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, why would it be banned?
Yeah, why do you think it's both influential and banned? Is it tapping into some primordial fear that we have about the way chaos always happens when we get together with no rules?
I think it was banned because actually it's quite a scary book when you read it, and it's also very, very depressing. Yeah. And the film as well, even the old black and white film, It's like that. I mean, the story is basically a group of boys are stranded on a desert island, and they start off as, I mean, it's very, you've got to see the British version, not the modern American version of the film. You've got to see the old 1963 British version, which is on YouTube, so you can get it. But it's these very British boys from, you know, very good schools. And it's essentially the story of how, without law, without adults, they descend into anarchy and chaos and bloodshed. I'm not giving away any of that. I love, there's some certain bits, like there was a child that they were throwing stones at, and one of the lines that Golding has is, "Round the squatting child was the protection of parents and school and policemen and the law. Roger's arm was conditioned by a civilization that knew nothing of him and was in ruins." So he you know, this idea that there are things within society that stop us doing things, and that within ourselves, all of us could be murderers, all of us could join in with the mob. It's an extraordinary book. Do you remember reading it? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's also a flip on, you know, man is born free, but is everywhere in chains. It's saying the other way around, that if you let us have our, you know, turn us back to nature, and we'll become red of tooth and claw, just like the rest of nature. Would that be true? So what goes wrong on the island?
Tooth and claw.
Tooth and claw, claw and tooth.
Well, it says there's one thing, that they're liberated from shame and self-consciousness. That's one phrase that's used. The world, that understandable and lawful world, was slipping away. Once there was this and that, and now the ship had gone. And then I think at the end, there's just a very poignant sentence where it says, "Ralph wept for his end of innocence, the darkness of man's heart, and the fall through the air of the true wise friend called Piggy." I think Golding got it right. Now, this other article that you mentioned challenges that, and I think modern contemporary society now wants to challenge that. They want to say, no, Golding got it wrong. Golding was living in an era of Auschwitz. And I'm saying, well, Auschwitz still happened, and Auschwitz can happen again.
Is it inevitable, though, that everything about every society will fall to its absolute plummet to its depths? I mean, you've also got other books like Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, in which Apocalypse Now, the movie set during Vietnam, was based on. And there you've got laws and politicians sending people into that sort of setting. Is there a commentary on that we inevitably fall into that?
Well, I think so, because I think that's what we are. And you're going to read a Bible verse in a moment. But before we do that, I do want to say something else about the article, because when I hear people commenting on Lord of the Flies, some people pick up and say, yes, this is what happens when humanity descends into religion. So there's kind of religious rituals, inverted commas, that the boys get into. The real story is fascinating, because the real story is a group of boys from Tonga who ended up being on an island for 15 months. And when they were picked up, 6 of them, I believe, they were in good health, they were civilized and all the rest of it. But what is fascinating in the detail of that is they came from a strict Catholic boarding school. I'm not sure what a lax Catholic boarding school is, but anyway, they came from a strict one, which was brilliant. Yeah. And they had rosters and all that kind of stuff. But the phrase that struck me out in the report was, their days began and ended with song and prayer. I want to suggest this. I think religion, particularly Christianity, kept those boys sane, kept those boys civilized. And I actually think if we have a society without religion, and it descends into mob chaos, as we're in danger of doing now, then the human darkness will come out. But if we have a society that's governed by Christian principles, then within human beings, God's law is written in their hearts. And you've got some verses for that. Yeah,
that's interesting, because in the Old Testament, you get God's laws written on stone, and then there's going to be a promise of it being written on your heart. I'm going to read some words, Ezekiel 36. I will give you a new heart and a new spirit, and I will put it within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my laws or my rules. So internalized obedience rather than external sort of command seems to be what's going on there.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting, like, say the COVID-19, I mean, we'll come back to this. The Swedes had this idea. They said, we can trust our people. We don't need to force them by law. Now we're waiting to see if that's going to work out. But, you know, it's true. If things are, if the only reason you don't go and rob your neighbor is because you might get caught, it's not a great society to be living in. I think we need the law, but we need something within. And I think that something within comes from God.
Yeah, I'm showing my age here, Dave, when I say the best Simpsons episode I saw was when Bart ends up on the same situation at a school camp and ends up being in charge. And Homer hears about it on the news and says, please don't let it be the boy. Please let it. Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm showing my age as well because that film was made in 1963 and I was 1 year old. I remember watching it and thinking profoundly about it. Right, listen, next week we're going to say goodbye, but next week we're gonna jump right forward, except we are and we're not. We're going to look at a clip from John Cleese of 30 years ago that this week has gone viral again for a very good reason. And it's more or less on the same theme about extremism and human behavior. So look forward to seeing you next week. I'm going to say goodbye, and you'll notice that we're both color coordinated. My colleague in the somewhat nicer brown is also going to say goodbye.
Goodbye, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.